Welcome back to another episode of the Downsizing Roadmap podcast with your hosts, Jody Roscoe and Heather Fisher. We're talking about all things downsizing, from our own experiences with clients to guest experts. Let's make downsizing easier, one conversation at a time. Hello, welcome to Downsizing Roadmap. I'm Jody Roscoe.
I'm Heather Fisher.
And today we're going to talk about family heirlooms and how to handle those without guilt.
Guilt is not a gift.
Guilt is not a gift,
Yeah.
right.
Lots to dive into there.
Lots to dive into today. I'm so excited. It's our 10th episode.
Yes, I can't even believe that 10 have gone by already.
I
We've
know.
been having so much fun. So
Yeah.
we hope all of you guys are enjoying it and getting lots of good info, and we're excited to dive in some more today.
Yeah, check us out, our Facebook page, Downsizing Roadmap. If you have questions, post them there and we'll answer them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Family heirlooms. It's a big one. When we teach our class, we have a list of things that are hard, and we'll delve into all of them. But one of them is heirlooms. People get stuck on these a lot.
Yeah, and all of the items on the hard list, I think people are stuck on them, not because of the objects themselves, but because of the emotion around them.
Right. So we're going to talk about why it's a little bit of an emotional struggle. My grandma, when she passed away, she left me her teacups, and she had like 50 of them. And my kids actually did go and have high tea with her all the time. My mom loved that, and my grandma loved that. And they would make tea, and they would pick out their favorite teacups. And so taking them all seemed like a lot, but we were able to pick up our favorite ones and use those now when we have tea and think about her. And so you can take pieces of it. So that's something to think about, taking pieces of it. So we'll talk about all of that, the psychology of why it's hard, a little bit of science, and then what we can do to creatively honor them, the heirlooms, and how to handle them if they're unwanted. So
Yes, and determining what is actually heirlooms that need big decisions around, and what could maybe be let go of to leave room to honor a few heirlooms.
Yeah. So scientifically, objects act as memory anchors for us. So when we see an object, we're wired to associate those with memories. Like it's science, guys. So if we actually own something, we are wired to want it more, whether we actually want it or not. Like we are wired to want to keep it just because it's in our orbit, just because we own it.
Yeah, there was a whole study on that. Did you see that? I was doing some research for this episode, and there was a study where they had however many people, and they were either had a coffee cup that they were given, and they had to decide how much money they would accept to give away this coffee cup.
Okay.
Or they were shown a coffee cup and had to decide how much money they would give. They were given money, and how much of it would they give away to obtain the coffee cup. Or I think there was a third group. It's not coming to me. But it was super interesting because what they found, that the group that had just been given this coffee cup, they'd only owned it for minutes, they had been given it, their price to give it away to someone was double what the group that was like, how much would you pay for this? It was a range between like 99 cents and $15. And the people, because they were told it was theirs and they had to make a decision to sell it, it was so interesting, the study that they did, that once you own it, in the study they doubled the price before they would give it away.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why when we talk about cleaning out things, we say, hold it in your hands and ask yourself, would you buy it again? Like, would you go out and buy it at the store if you needed, do you need it enough that you would go out and buy it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to realize that some of the value you think it holds is just because of that ownership. And, it's tough sometimes, but you have to be realistic on the real value out in the market for someone to buy something.
Yeah. So I'm just going to read some sciencey things around it. So it's called associative memory when we interact with the objects from our past, and they will trigger vivid recollections of people or places, emotions. So you can look at a childhood book and remember your mom reading that to you, or even a T-shirt or holiday decorations are often big. They can evoke really strong nostalgic feelings and attachment. There's multisensory encoding, which items that engage multiple senses, so it's not just looking at it, it's your touch or smell, like people's like clothes smell like them or things like that. So multisensory, all of the things make it deeply more embedded into our memory. And then we have autobiographical memory, which objects serve as physical markers for our personal history. So autobiographical meaning our history is written, and so that thing becomes part of the history. And so instead of like letting that just be in our memories, we actually just associate it with the thing.
Yeah.
And we're not disassociating the memories we have, which we carry inside of us, with the thing that is on the outside of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure everybody has things that bring back memories. Do you have something that brings back memories for you?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this, and I mean, my mom is still in the house that I grew up in. So there, my parents have been there, 45 years-ish, give or take a few. And so I was thinking about that. I haven't had to let go. It is a
You're
bit
not
of
really letting go of anything.
Yeah,
yet.
I haven't had to go through that let go, and it is comforting knowing, oh, this is exactly in that spot, and this is here, and I know different markers from childhood are there. But I do think, I've gone through, losing my grandparents and things, and I have a couple items from my grandparents' house that I've had now in my house for many years. And it's just, I have one table that was always in the same spot in their kitchen. And, I've now had it in my house for many years. And I just like knowing where it came from, but I don't need to recreate their whole house full of things. So yeah, I do appreciate those triggers that a memory can bring, but I like when it's not an overwhelming amount of stuff, just little reminders.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're trying to bring up the stories, right? The stories are what you're trying. When you see those things, it brings you back to those vivid memories. And so and that's what you think. So one of the things that you need to do is kind of shift your mindset around it and preserve the memory and not necessarily keep the thing, right? So, and I was thinking about this. So my mom had obviously lots and lots of things. We've talked about this before, how many things my mom had. And I was thinking about something that I had let go. And I was kind of feeling a little bit like, should I have let that go? And then I thought about that, and I thought, actually, the reason to have it in the first place is so that it evokes that memory that I was already thinking about. Like I was already having the memory.
Yeah.
And so I don't need the thing to have the memory. Does that?
It does. And I was thinking about this as well. I lost my grandparents when I was relatively young. So I didn't, I wasn't an adult dealing with what you have to deal with when someone passes. And, my grandma on my dad's side, she passed when I was like 7 years old. And I was trying to think, my parents might have a few objects or things, but I'm not even sure what those are. And so tangibly, I don't have anything from their house. And I was only 7 when she passed, but I can still picture like nearly every corner of the house. We went there quite frequently the last few years she was with us. And, I do have, even at that young age, I do have those memories. But yet I can't think of anything that was in the house I grew up in all those years that was like, oh, this is from grandma's house, or, or all of that. So I think it's so true. It's the memory, and that's why you want the heirlooms. But if you let some of them go, the memories do not go.
Right.
When they're, what formed you into the person that you are.
I mean, I'm literally in that same boat. My great grandparents. I'm lucky enough to have known 6 of my 8 great grandparents, which is
That's
crazy.
amazing.
But my great grandma, passed away. I was probably about that same age, and I can still vividly remember their house. And like you said, all the corner. Like, I can remember their house very vividly, and we didn't even go there that often. It's not like we lived that close. We visited it here and there. And she bought me this Easter dress, the last thing we did. And I remember every single moment of it. I remember going into the department store. I remember the dress. It had little colors sewn. It had a button across the top, and then the button was green with the sewn down green, and orange and sewn down orange. And then she bought me patent leather shoes that I was so excited about. And I grew up in California, so I wanted to wear them outside, but it was snowy, and they wouldn't let me. But I have like these super vivid memories. I don't have the dress. It's okay. It's okay. I still have those great memories around it. So I think if you can kind of change your mindset on preserving that memory and not necessarily preserving the object of it.
Yeah. At my other grandparents' house in Cleveland growing up, when we would go, as kids, they didn't have a lot of toys unless we brought stuff from home, but they had, they had this Spider-Man puzzle, and it was round, and it was a round jigsaw puzzle. So I thought it was just the coolest thing.
Yeah.
And, I know now that is at my parents' house. And I've never touched it. I loved it. Every time we went to my grandparents, we did this puzzle, and I loved it so much. But since, it's been at my parents' house, I don't think I've ever seen it out. My kids haven't done it, so it's still a treasured memory, but
you don't need the puzzle.
I don't need the
itself.
puzzle.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I have, so next is select key pieces, which is kind of what we were talking about in your mindset. Select key pieces instead of keeping everything. So that's the teacups, right? So keep your favorite ones. That's what we did. That best represent that moment or that person.
And you've talked about that before with your mom's Christmas dishes, and I would encourage people to feel like if it's collections or large sets of things or a large amount, it's okay to keep a portion of it and really treasure part of it without the burden of a lot.
Right. And you can transform items. You can turn them into, take T-shirts and turn them into a T-shirt quilt, or do things like that. You can transform them or put some things in a shadow box. My husband's sister has their grandpa tied fishing flies, and so she take her favorite 10 of those or whatever and put them into a shadow box, and they're really cool. Fishing flies are really cool, and intricate. And so it's an interesting piece to hang on the wall, and people will go up and look at it, and you can really appreciate his skill that he had there, and not have the whole hobby, all of the things.
I think too, in families, ideas like that are great ways to honor a family member and something they enjoyed, but to spread that so that multiple people could enjoy it, because at the time, several shadow boxes probably could have been made for whoever wanted that, or we've seen, cookbooks being recreated. I think your family did that, and those can be shared. Or if you had, all of the teacups, and there were more family members that all wanted to honor her love of tea, ways like that are a great way that everybody can take something to honor that. I know my grandparents were antique dealers, and so when my grandpa passed second, when they passed, we were all asked as, grandchildren, and I'm sure my mom and her siblings all did the same, but like, what's the one thing that reminds you? And, choose one of the antiques or whatever. And I have, a Royal Dalton figurine that I know my grandma loved. She had, the dancing ladies in all the colors, and I picked the one that I loved best, but it reminds me of her having a full shelf of all of them.
Yeah.
So I think don't also be hesitant to break up collections when you can honor someone across a larger family.
Yeah, and it's something that they loved and you loved because they loved it. And it reminds you of their, joy around that because they loved it. So, and that is unique to each person, what that thing is going to be. And it might not, what they think it might not be what it actually is for you, right?
Right.
So you have to be the one who picks it. So some stumbling blocks that people have with changing their mindset around it is, why we hold on to these things. So guilt and obligation, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that, oh my gosh, we have favorite teacups and it's something. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't love that thing. And it's been in our house forever and I've never loved it, but now it's mine because I've been, gifted that down, or I have a whole house full of my mom's stuff and I don't know how to sort through it. I think we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Because people, I think a lot of times they'll need to sell the house or whatnot, and then they'll be like, okay, well, I can't deal with it because it's too much. And so they just bring it all to their house and have to sift through it. But then since they've owned it, now they feel like they need to keep it.
Once it comes in the door, it's harder to go out.
Yeah.
I think, too, if someone is needs to make those decisions for themselves, but they're struggling on the mindset, there sometimes is that guilt put on other people that, oh, don't you ever get rid of my, fill in the blank, whatever it is.
Grandma's sewing machine,
don't
whatever
you dare.
it is.
That's been in the family for 75 years.
Right.
Don't get rid of that. And, in honoring someone else's wishes on that, yes, you want to honor their wishes, but if it was simply a matter of them delaying the decision, there's a little bit of how can I honor that in a way that's not burdening down my life and losing a little guilt of they were pushing their guilt from wherever it came from just right down the road.
Yeah, they weren't making the decision. They weren't strong enough to say, okay, this doesn't fit in my life because my mom gave it to me, so now I'm going to give it to you, and you have to carry that.
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes are afraid of just dishonoring the person who gave it to them. Like they want to feel like they've honored their family member and the things.
Their request.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one sometimes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people request too much a little bit. And so that's something to think about for yourself as you're dealing with your own heirlooms for the people that you're going to give them to. Are you requesting too much? Are you pushing too much on them, not letting them choose what really resonates with them?
Yeah. And if the opportunity is there, again, back to sharing those stories about why it's important, and that sharing that the moment of hearing about their childhood or something that happened in their life that makes this object important is the valuable memory that will put both of you at peace. So if you're trying to pass things on, back to that, make sure there's a story.
Yeah. And if you're the adult child, go talk to them about all the things. Why do you have a curio cabinet full of crystal? What made you love crystal? What made, why is this your collection? Whatever that collection is, and tell me about each one. And I think just hearing their stories and being able to know them better from a few hours of going through things still doesn't mean that you need to keep them later. But I think it gives everybody a little bit of, joy that they're able to share those stories with each other, because that's what's really important.
An afternoon with some lunch and hearing the stories and some patience will be such a treasured memory, cherished by both sides of that. So don't discount that time can really make it easier.
Yeah. So if you're feeling like you're dishonoring the person, we've talked about that. Just it doesn't mean that you're letting go of them. You just want to keep a little piece of it. Another thing is that objects feel like they're a stand-in for the person. So people will feel like it's a symbolic stand in for the person who gave it to us. So that feels like you're keeping part of someone that you've lost. And I understand that. And there may be a few pieces that you can keep that feel like that. Jewelry is something I feel like if you have something really special that they wore all the time and you wear it now all the time, that's a little piece of them. But it doesn't need to be the whole house of everything.
Yeah. I think jewelry also, is great because you can wear it you'd wear the same thing all the time if it was something they wore daily, but it can really add to those special occasions to really take a piece of that person with you if it's, an event or a wedding or, those other life milestones, you're bringing them along to enjoy that too. In a small way.
Yeah, my mom had a necklace that had sea glass in it. My mom loved the ocean, and she loved sea glass. And it wasn't actually something that she wore all the time. My mom was somebody who changed her jewelry all the time. I'm the person who puts on something and takes it off 10 years later. And so, but she changed her jewelry all the time. But she had this beautiful piece of sea glass that was in a necklace, and it just spoke to me when she passed away. And I was going through her things, and I put that on, I wore that for a year. And that sea glass, you can rub it, and it's so soft, and it just really reminded me of her, and it just really connected me to her, even though I know it wasn't her favorite necklace. She had tons of necklaces, but I don't know, something like that where you can feel connected to them.
Little touchstones.
Just little pieces, though. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. So another thing people do is they think they're going to forget the person. And so they think if they get rid of it, and that's back to the stories. That's back to the stories of are you going to forget the stories or not? So writing down the stories, recording the stories, doing something, taking pictures of the thing, something like that can help you change your mindset around being afraid that you're going to forget people. But we do get that a lot. What if I don't remember that?
Yeah, and I think that that extra layer serves two purposes because you can then maybe not have so much stuff, but you are also preserving the story for someone after you, whereas the item doesn't hold that information. So the item is absolutely just stuff if the story is gone, but none of us know, how long we're going to be here or if memory issues are going to become a problem for us. And so if you're using a method for retaining the story around something, that can be more easily shared down generations to have that information. I mean, even looking back at my own photos, I am like, which of my daughters is that, with your curly hair, you're like, who is in the picture?
From behind.
Who is, what was that friend's name from, middle school? And at the time it was so vivid,
right?
But as time goes by, all the details of the memories go. So certainly around objects, if you're not putting that in a way that can be passed down, it doesn't become valuable to someone after you. And
I think when you were talking earlier, you were saying that nothing in the house, spoke to you, but you loved that one puzzle and you had such great memories around the puzzle, and then you haven't really done that. I guess what I'm trying to say is your memories, that doesn't mean that they are going to go and your kids are going to have the same memories that you had, is what I'm trying to get to. Right. So I had Nancy Drew books that I loved. And I read them to my Nana. She loved reading, and she was one of the people that helped me, foster my love of reading when I was little. And so when I came to visit her, we'd always get Nancy Drew books, and I had the whole series of it. And I kept those for my daughter, Maddie. And her experience with those, she read one or two and she's like, yeah, whatever, it wasn't the same, and you kind of sometimes want to recreate that for the next people, and it doesn't happen, and it's okay. I'm not upset about it. It just kind of made me think about our experiences are our experiences, and so if your next generation is not connected to whatever things that you are, they are connected to something else, and that's okay. It's okay for us all to have our own experiences and be connected to what we're connected to, and let them be connected to what they're connected to.
Yeah, and we've had people ask, how can I, my kids don't want anything. How can I have them, want these heirlooms? And at some point, they don't have those memories around them. But the best way is to make those important family objects part of their story too. So when we talk about honoring a few small things, if you had things that you had on display that were from family members, and so, or you brought out the special platter every Thanksgiving that had been for a couple generations, the platter, whatever it is, if you are continuing to use it and love it or talk about it or display it so that story is heard over and over, it is more likely that that will be part of your kid's story.
Yeah.
But if you are taking on, a bunch of stuff from someone else's life and just putting it in the attic or the garage, and it definitely will not be part of their story, and it'll be just old stuff
that they don't want.
Yeah, that they don't want. I had the same experience with books. At some point as an adult, when my kids were, preteens or whatever, and at some point I was at my mom's and she gave me a box of my books, assortment of books. I love books too, that I had at her house. Like, okay, take these, cleaning out the closets. But I had the most enjoyable, hour of pulling them all out and I remember this, and I have got, my preteen readers at that time I'm like, oh great, a perfect audience, what do you want? This is this book, just telling them, and they just looked at me like, yeah, those don't look very good,
right, I'm not interested.
Those don't look very interesting, and I'm not sure if they read any of them. They're both big readers too, but it was my love of those silly books for whatever, the way they hit me at the right time in my life, and it's just a whole different thing. So,
and I think that's how life goes. Like, you share things, and sometimes they hit, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay. I think too, a huge part of this is just about expectations and unspoken expectations, and things that you think you're supposed to do versus what you actually want to do. And I think there's so much of that in this and in life that we need to just let go of and stop expecting, our kids to want all our stuff, or people to want to do this or that exactly like you did.
Yeah.
It's just okay.
Yeah, that is a very good point.
Yeah, expectations are, they cause some problems here and there.
Of course they do. Yes, in so many ways.
So back to for the fear of forgetting. Again, I think if you can create some kind of process where you keep the stories, whether that's a video, whether that's a picture, whether that's, writing a journal, whatever that looks like, keeping the stories of the things is what's more important than keeping the things.
Yes. Or just having ways to have them in front of you that aren't burdening your environment, that just give you a little passing nod to that memory every day.
And so if you're starting to let go of some things that aren't working for you, finding somebody else who loves it is actually a really great way of handling it.
Yeah, I saw a way that I loved the word choice in what I was reading. They were talking about the donation impact, and I loved that wording, and it was kind of twofold. We've definitely experienced this with clients when there's something to donate that is maybe all one category, from a hobby or a career or something. There are so many either people, students, societies, clubs. It is highly likely that you could find somebody that would love, whatever, a collection of books about, airplanes, or a train set, or, sporting gear or fishing gear towards something. There are going to be other people that have a passion for that it's either so specialized that they need it, or it's just in need and you're giving someone an opportunity for something maybe they couldn't afford to go get, or it's a club that is just, whether it's to be distributed to the members or just used as a club, art supplies, or there's collector clubs for everything. I think that is such a great way to honor that person and know that you're not just putting it in the landfill, you are finding that impact that makes their legacy live on, which is the whole point of what you want to do. And, there's historical societies, if you feel like the things you have are valuable because of history, military uniforms that are old, or something to do with your local town or city. You have family connections here where we live, and, there are places that would love to have things connected to that, libraries and things like that. So if you're holding on to things because of that type of value, there's lots of ways to have that donation impact. The other way they looked at it in this article I was reading was about if you were selling some items that you were feeling guilt over selling, to use the proceeds to honor that person by, like, everything we make from selling all of this will go to this charitable organization that they loved. And so the monetary value is not important. You can go with what the market will give you, but it's just like, we know we're going to have a estate sale or garage sale or sell this, and use that money to give a donation to honor that person.
I love that. Or you could use it like, we could go to tea, several times, or something like that. In
use
honor,
that to gather
like to
all of
have
the
a
family, depending on
experience that they would have loved, or something like that.
A family trip or a family meal, or whatever level that ends up being. I loved those ideas because it wasn't just like, we're just dismantling this person's life and, not doing anything. And I think that works when someone is still here doing that for themselves too. If you're getting hung up on the value, think of that, be dreamy about that goal. Like, if I get rid of these things, I'm going to do this with my grandkids, or I'm going to, earmark what that is. And then you're excited about watching that grow as you get rid of things. So I loved that.
I do love that. I do love that. We talked about endowment and why we want to keep things, and whether we're willing to pay the same price. We talked about that.
Yeah.
I think, again, back to that mindset, you just are going to need to change your mindset around what needs to happen, and whether you're really trying to keep that stuff or whether you're just really trying to keep the memories.
Yeah.
And I think most people are just really trying to keep the memories. So ask yourself, when you're looking at your things as you're cleaning out, do you love them?
Yeah.
Do I love it? Do I use it? Do I have space for it?
Yes.
Am I going to put it in a box and nobody's ever going to see it again? Because then that's no good.
Yeah. Another question is, am I preserving it for someone else? And I read that and I felt like then you need to ask all the same questions.
Yeah.
Changing it. Do they love it? Will they use it? And you can't stop at that level, because I think that last question is a scapegoat. Oh, yeah, I'm saving this for my kids, my grandkid. When they're going to need this for their apartment, this, whatever. So I think if you're adding that question on, be honest with the answers for yourself. But then if you're using that third question as a, way to get around your answers from the other one, and delaying that decision, make sure you go right back through the same questions, changing it to they, will they love it? Will they use it? Yeah.
And does it have a story? I mean, is it something that somebody just went out and got at Target and now, it doesn't really have, a lot of significance. They maybe used it, but are we keeping things? I always say that, like, if I go buy something today, does that mean my great-granddaughter has to keep it just because I bought it?
I think we talked about this in a class we did, the Design Through the Decades class, and I was thinking about the point that we had in there. I think it was the invention of the steam engine that changed like furniture and all of that, because at one point it was difficult. You couldn't just go to any, Walmart, IKEA, Target, anywhere and buy.
That's right.
There weren't furniture stores on every corner.
That's right.
And so there was a higher, I'm not speaking monetary value, but there was a higher value to the things in your home because they were harder to get. It wasn't an Amazon truck at your door within hours.
Yeah,
it was
for sure. It's throwaway.
a whole different process. And so I understand that mentality carrying on, but at the end of the day, the next generations are living in a place where it probably is easier for them to, order something from Amazon or somewhere else than to rent a truck to go to grandma's house to pick up a dresser to get it. But like the whole ease of getting things, for the good or the bad, it is much more disposable. And so you have to factor that in.
Well, and the quality is different. Like, it's all different, and the mentality is different. So the mentality is more of a throwaway kind of society, which I hope we can change here in the future a little bit, because that's going to put us in some trouble. But I think, and I do think it'll come around. I think I see people repurposing and doing some things with furniture that was really made with, great quality. But at the moment, that's not what we've got. And so,
but we've got younger people. It's shifted a little bit that people aren't setting up a household as early as they were. And so they're not coming from that place of being early 20s and setting up their household and taking, grandma's dining table and mom and dad's sofa set because they have nothing. Yeah. That, whatever has changed, people are setting up that household. What did we just learn? Like, the average first-time homebuyer age is 38. Now 38. We just heard that stat. And so by the time people are setting up that first household, they already have, their incomes are higher. Yeah. They're past that first job. They
want it to look a certain way, so they want to buy the things to make it look a certain way.
It's a whole different thing.
It is. So let's talk for a second about how we could creatively display or honor some things. So shadow boxes we talked about, making memory quilts or framing just super specific art. You have a whole box of your kids' art from when they're little, and you're like, oh, what should we do with that? But, pick one or two and frame those. I have one from Ryan that is a red cardinal with blue and snow, and so I put it up at winter. Like, I just put it as I change things around. It's kind of like a decoration, but I put it up in the winter, and it makes me happy. I love that one. Yeah. So frame a couple of them and let the rest of it go.
Yeah, my dad collects little wrought iron skillets. It's a thing, and they all have a different design, like souvenir design on the inside, whatever. So he has hundreds. Oh, gosh. And when I was a kid, 70s, 80s, whatever, they were all over the wall at one point, and all the things that I would not currently decorate with them. Yeah. But it was super interesting because we all just know how much my dad loved collecting them. As I've said, my grandparents were antique dealers, and my parents were involved in that a bit. So they went to a lot of antique stores and antique shows. And I think for my dad, he liked to hunt for something that was the finding something, not the, oh, this is pretty, or oh, this is valuable. He liked the hunt of it. And so we all know how much he loves his skillets. And it was so great a few years ago. I don't know, it's been 5 or 10 years now. And he was like, I'm going to get out my skillets when you all are here. And he took all of us, like, one by one, each grandchild on their own. And he had all the skillets laid out. And it was like, pick which ones, you would like to have, and he gave them at that time. And so I think all of us have, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And I know my kids and myself and, all of us are like, oh my gosh, I love this, and I will display them, and it will be totally different than, the wall of them that, I grew up with, but it will remind me of that in exactly the same way. And, I know my kids love the ones that they have. So when you can pass it along with that joy of it, it doesn't have to be like,
and they want it too.
Yeah. They couldn't wait
That's
for their
awesome.
turn to go in and pick a few. So
I love that. One more idea for creatively honoring, and be careful with this one, but you can do kind of an heirloom rotation. So you could display a couple pieces at a time if you don't have a ton of space, but be careful. I don't want a whole bunch of boxes of things.
Yeah,
but
that's interesting.
Maybe just like you do for Christmas, you bring things out and then you put them away. Mm-hmm. So you could do, some kind of a little rotation, but a little rotation, people.
I would think that would go back to the tip we've talked about in other decluttering episodes. But if you've rotated a few times, but then you've kind of landed on the one that you love, maybe it's time to let go of the boxes.
If you find yourself not rotating again.
Yeah, maybe that's the sign of this is the one that feels right.
Or maybe something feels more like spring and something feels more like winter, just a little bit like that. But yes, I agree with that. So, framing things, repurposing things. So there's tons of amazing things. You can use, little teacups and have you seen the teacups now that they plant with little planters and succulents? And,
the succulents.
Yeah, just kind of repurpose things a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I think jewelry, if you have, there's lots of ways, ideas for costume jewelry that makes beautiful art, but maybe isn't holding the value. I think also don't forget if you do have some, jewelry or gemstones that have a little bit more monetary value, and you have the means to do it, you can have that taken to a jeweler. Mm-hmm. Yes, jeweler. I was saying the word wrong. You take that to the jeweler and repurpose it if it's just not a style that fits you, but you love the person it's from. You love that it honors them. Yeah. It's fairly simple to have it repurposed from, a ring into a charm for a necklace or, split it up. I think, too, that's a way you can split something up into, 2 daughters, here's 2 pieces of jewelry from one, or things like that. So don't forget those options.
Yep. So in the end, it's really a mindset change, I think, around it, and just choosing the things that you love. And some things to remember: guilt's not a gift, right? We don't need to look at something and feel guilty and terrible about it, not loving it, but keeping it because we just feel like we should. So just remember that you're not responsible for preserving everything. That's not your job to preserve everything. Just because it's been in the family doesn't mean you have to keep it. And I get that that's some heavy guilt in some families, including mine. But it's the truth. And you keep the things that you love and let go of the rest of it. Or if a family member is really pressuring you, ask them if they want it, right? So if they want it, if they tell you they don't want it either, well, they don't need to make you be the one who has to keep it. So be upfront with your family about what you're keeping and why you're keeping it. Tell them, which ones resonate with you and why. And if there's things that resonate with them, they should keep those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Good tips.
Yep. Head on over to downsizingroadmap.com if you need some places that you can donate, or some additional ideas on what to do with some of your stuff.
Yeah, we would also love your questions or your feedback on our podcast. So they're on downsizingroadmap.com. Just use the contact us, and if there's any questions we can answer for you in future episodes, let us know.
Thanks so much for listening.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Downsizing Roadmap podcast. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who might need a little downsizing inspiration. Have questions or ideas for future episodes? Reach out to us on our website, www.downsizingroadmap.com. Until next time, let's keep simplifying and moving forward.